pyramid. But similarly, no units can enter the time pyramid. So units cannot enter or exit the time pyramid. And this is good with the Colossus because you can still attack through the time pyramid. So basically, the Colossus can attack an enemy hero in a time pyramid and then use its superior range to deal damage to the enemy. So that should be a lot of fun. Initially, the Colossus hero doesn't have a splash attack. You notice that its attack doesn't sweep, but you can actually upgrade the Colossus hero's attack to deal splash damage. And as you upgrade it, it deals a larger and larger splash, and then it will do the sweeping. Attack animation. You can also increase the Colossus hero's range so that it has a greater range when it attacks. And the Colossus hero's ultimate is Cliff Walk, and this allows the Colossus hero to move up and down cliffs. So basically, the Colossus hero is a long-range combat unit that has a decent mobility. So just abuse your range and your mobility with the Colossus hero, and you should succeed. Now, a hero that I think a lot of people really like is the Reaver hero. And the Reaver is a StarCraft 1 unit that was not in StarCraft 2, which is a bit of a shame because it's a pretty fun unit to use. I just want to say that this Reaver model is not mine. It was actually created by a user called Killstar from Hive Workshop for Warcraft 3, and it was converted to a StarCraft 2 model by a user called PVT Chevron from c2mapster.com. And PVT Chevron also added the walking animation. So I'd like to thank those two guys for the walk on the Reaver model. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to have a Reaver model. Then I wouldn't be able to create a Reaver hero. Of course, the Reaver model I still have to add team colors to the Reaver model, and the Reaver model doesn't have any attachment points, so shield actors don't work properly. But I'll probably fix that in the future. So the Reaver hero is the slowest hero in the game, but also is a very long-range hero, and it shoots scarabs. And the thing about scarabs is they're basically ground units. So they have to path around things, like I had to path around that forge, for example, to shoot those units. And also, unlike in StarCraft 1, these scarabs don't cost any minerals, so don't worry about shooting enemies. And scarabs don't do splash damage like they did in StarCraft 1. However, the Reaver hero has an ability called Super Scarab, where it can shoot larger scarabs that will deal splash damage. So that's the use. So the Reaver can't still deal splash damage; it just costs a bit of energy. The Reaver hero also has two passives. You notice that I have some of the StarCraft Reaver icons. It has a passive called Scarab Damage, and this just increases the damage that scarabs and super scarabs deal. And the Reaver hero also has an ability, a really cool ability called Reaver Capacity. And what Reaver Capacity is that it basically allows the Reaver to store scarabs and use them all at once. So the Reaver produces scarabs at a rate of 1 every 3 seconds. And if you just constantly attack with the Reaver, this ability won't do anything. But let's say you don't attack for like 3 seconds. Then it will store the scarab in the Reaver, and then the Reaver will be able to fire multiple scarabs at once. For example, right now I have 2 scarabs stored, and you can see that it indicates the number of scarabs stored on the icon. So if I attack a unit, rather than shooting 1 scarab, it'll shoot two scarabs consecutively. So it's a pretty cool ability, and of course, it takes a while to replenish your scarab count. And each time you upgrade this ability, you can increase your scarab storage by 1. And of course, there is a slight delay between each scarab being launched. So if you're fast enough, you can actually split your attacks among multiple targets. For example, you see that I split my attack on multiple targets there. So that's a pretty cool ability. And the Reaver's ultimate is Warp Prison. And this basically allows the Reaver Hero to create Warp Prism. And now for energy. And now some of you may wonder, well, what's the point in having this unit that is very slow? I mean, not very slow. It doesn't really do any damage. One thing you should notice that the Reaver Hero is very, very slow. And of course, the Warp Prism is very fast and mobile. So what you can do is you can use the Warp Prism to transport the Reaver Hero, and then you can drop the Reaver Hero. So you basically just use it as mobility for the Reaver Hero. And this works really well for Reaver Hero because you could drop the Reaver, unleash a barrage of Super Scarabs and Scarabs, jump back into Warp Prism, run away, wait for your Scarab count to come back, and then drop the Reaver again. So it's basically like Reaver Shuttle Micro in StarCraft 1, and that was really cool. So I wanted to incorporate that into my game because I know a lot of people miss that. And the final hero for the Protoss is the Archon Hero. And the Archon Hero, one of its abilities is Maelstrom. This was an ability that the Dark Archon had in StarCraft 1. And this just stuns units in an AoE for a short period of time. But beware, it stuns your allies as well. So be sure not to stun your allies. So it could be a useful ability, especially in team fights. The Archon Hero also has two passives. One of its abilities basically gives the Archon Splash and increases its splash damage. I try to make sure that none of the heroes started out with splash damage initially. Just try to make sure things are balanced. Otherwise, a hero might be too strong initially against, for example, the Zerg. Against Zerg because Zerg have Zerglings. Anyway, so you can upgrade the Archon Hero Splash. It also has an ability called Immolation, and this was an ability that the Demon Hunter had in Warcraft 3. That was pretty cool. It basically damages nearby enemy units. The idea is like the Archon sort of burns nearby enemy units with its, the stuff that's radiating out of it. But unlike the ability in Warcraft 3, this ability is passive. So it can be a really useful ability if you want to, for the Archon to have initially, if you want to, especially if you use the Archon a lot for crittering, which is where you kill critters, etc. And the Archon Hero's ultimate is pretty cool. It's called Power Overwhelming. And with basically the Archon, I disabled sound for this video because in my last video I had sound turned on and you couldn't really hear me properly. But what the Archon Hero does is he goes, Power Overwhelming, and then he starts to flash, I just use it, he starts to flash different colors, and he becomes invulnerable, and then he becomes invulnerable, and then he starts to, he can move twice as fast, and he can attack twice as fast, and it's only for a short period of time. It's sort of like, think of Mario from like Nintendo, but with like the star. It's sort of like that, but it's a pretty cool ability. So yeah, so I guess they'll go into Zerg Heroes.